Hey class, so I want to teach you a little bit about an example of a state machine in the context of a water softener. So here we are in my basement, my mechanical room, looking at my water softener, and just a little bit about how a water softener works, in case you're not familiar with it. Here in Idaho, we have what's known as hard water. There's a lot of minerals, so we have this tank of salt. And inside that tank is this yellowish tank that has a lot of very fine plastic beads. It's almost like, if you ever had cream of rice cereal, it's like the raw cream of rice stuff. It's just very, very small, fine beads. That all the water in the house passes through these beads and then captures some of those minerals that end up creating hard water, scale, and that white stuff on your shower heads. It can ruin your pipes and so forth. So these are supposed to capture it, but you got to clean those minerals out every once in a while. And so that's what this device does, is it uses the salt water to clean them out. So under the hood here a little bit, I got this, popped it off. Here's what 9 years of slowly dripping salt water looks like. So in here there's this tube with this kind of venturi mechanism. This is how water gets pumped into the tank and then gets sucked back out to clean those beads. So back here we have water coming in and out. We can bypass it with this valve. So all water will come in, pass through the beads, and then come back out through here. But when it needs to clean the beads, it uses this to pump water into the tank and pump it back out to clean the beads. On here there's a little DC motor, and you'll hear that when I turn it on. There's a DC motor here that's covered in red with power wires, a gearbox right here, and it turns some kind of a metal gear with a bunch of notches on it. And there's a limit switch here that switches. When it goes around and touches these notches, then the computer, which is down here, knows what state this is in, okay? So as this spins, it's going to open and close certain components to allow water to pass in and out of the beads or suck in and out of this, okay? So that's kind of how, a little under the hood. If I put it back, walk through and look at the state machine components. So right now, it's in a state of just kind of just sitting, waiting. Has a kind of a regular schedule of when it will clean the beads, but when it's not time, it just sits and waits. And it's got a meter here to tell the salt level and the time, which is actually a bit off, but I don't ever really care. and we can program it to run. So I'm going to force it to do a clean cycle here real quick. We'll look at the different states. So right now we're in a state of kind of rest. It's just waiting for the clock to hit a certain time on a certain day of the week, and then it's just going to start cycling and cleaning itself. And so until then, it's just in this rest state. So if I force it out of this state, so in this state, it's waiting for certain commands. It can respond to things like, here's the salt level. I can change the salt level, push programming buttons. So it's not like it's doing nothing. It's still responsive to some buttons. If I hold down this recharge button, and it's going to get noisy here in a little bit, and I'll try to talk over it. That sound you're hearing is the motor. That motor is spinning that metal wheel to engage a different part of the function. So we're now in a new state, and you can see here down here, it says it's backwash cleaning. So it's going to do a little bit of just manual cleaning, just using just regular water from the well to clean off some of those beads before it starts draining from the tank. And you can see it's going to stay in this state until this timer runs out. Okay, so that's its next state, is this clean cycle, this initial backwash clean cycle. I'm going to skip it. I don't want to wait that whole time, so I'm going to skip it by pressing this button. You can hear the motor running again now to the next state. So the water stopped, the motor's still turning. Okay, now it got to a new state where it's now flushing different. And then now that it's done in that backwash clean state, now it's in a clean state. It's going to be running like this, or sorry, a rinse state down here, rinse. It's going to run for, you know, almost 4 minutes. Again, I don't want to wait that long, but this is another state, another state in the program. I'm going to skip this. Okay, now you can see it's going to start filling. The motor's turning. You can hear that, all the gears turning, that little metal disc. And once it stops turning, okay, now it's going to be filling. Notice this went back to the clock. This is, it was like 10:50 something before. Now it's just the clock, because it's not going to count how long. It's not going to have a timer to tell when to stop. But instead, in this state, it's going to fill, and it's going to start filling this tank. And what is going on is inside here, there's a long piece of plastic, let me see if I can get it. Well, maybe not right now. I don't know if I can get it where you can see with your hand, but there's a long rod with this kind of a foam piece on it that floats. And so what this is doing is this is going to just keep pumping water in until that float gets to a certain level, and then it'll sense that it's off. So notice the difference in states. Before it had a state where it was a timer that was counting down. Now it's in a state where it's waiting for a sensor to tell it when to stop. Okay, so I'm gonna skip that sensor real quick and then just go past, pretend it's already full. Okay, so now the motor's turning again just a little bit. Now it's going to this rinse state. This is time in minutes. So what it's going to do is it's now going to start sucking some of that filled water out of the tank a little bit at a time with some of the water from my well to clean off all those plastic beads. And it's going to do it for 111 minutes. So now in this state, right, it's back to the countdown version. It's not waiting for a sensor. It's just going to keep running. I kind of wish it would keep running until it sensed this tank was empty, but because sometimes it leaves, as you can see right now, it leaves a bit of water at the bottom. So there's a fault, and I think it should have another sensor at the bottom to know when the water is empty in the tank, and just keep doing this. But so it's a countdown timer. It's going to go for another 110 minutes. We definitely don't want to wait that long. So this is when it's actually cleaning, pushing salt water through those plastic beads to clean them. Okay, now it's going to another state where after it rinsing and cleaning with a bunch of salt water, we don't want to drink that salt water. And so what it's going to do is going to now rinse again all those beads off with fresh water to get that salt taste off of it. And that's going to run for a certain amount of time, 10 and a half minutes or so. I'm going to skip this state. You can hear that motor running again. Now it's in another, I don't know what this one's doing. It seems like another rinse, backwash state. I'm going to skip this part again. Okay, now it's all done. So now it's back in its rest state. So you can see that there's different states of the program. When it's in a certain state, it's going to be looking at the timer to stop and know when to move on, or it's going to be looking for a sensor to know when to move on to the next state. And then in each state, it's trying to accomplish a different function. So when you're programming a state machine, you think of it as in what's the next step and then the next steps, and you can go in sequence. Some state machines, you could even skip a sequence. It just depends on how you program it. But here's, again, just wanted to show an example of a state machine, and this one using a water softener. Thanks.